What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here, and this is going to be the final big spoiler review of Twilight of the Republic. The preview season has ended. We have all the cards now, and yeah, I'm going to go through the last 50 cards, so, stay tuned for a longer video than some of these past compilations. We're going to start here with the Devastating Gunship. This is a 5-cost Vigilance Villainy space unit. It is a 3/5 with Grit. This unit gets +1 power for each damage on it, and when played, defeat an enemy unit with 2 or less remaining HP. It has the Separatist droid vehicle and transport traits. So this is an interesting card. I'm not entirely sure what I think about it. So 5 for a 3/5 Grit in space is and it is a space unit, despite the art sort of looking like it's in atmosphere. It is a space unit. Yeah, I don't know. So 5 for a 3/5. Like, it isn't the greatest stat line, but it's not terrible, especially with Grit. When played, defeat an enemy unit can be really powerful, but the fact that it has to be an enemy unit with 2 or less remaining HP isn't amazing. On the other hand, I can definitely think of some cases where this would be really good. So imagine a scenario where you play this and the opponent has a 7th Fleet Defender with its shield still up, and you just kill it through its shield and then have a relevant unit in space afterwards. It would be pretty sweet. So I don't know. It's possible in a swarmier meta like we might see with set 3, we're going to have more opportunities for there to be enemy units with 2 or less remaining HP to defeat, and if so, this could be really good, but, we're going to have to see. Next up, we have the Providence Destroyer. This is an 8-cost 5/7. It has Exploit 2. While playing this card, defeat up to 2 units you control, and this card costs 2 less for each unit defeated this way. On attack, give an enemy space unit -2/-2 for this phase. And it is a 5/7 Vigilance Villainy card. Separatist Vehicle Capital Ship traits. Like a lot of exploit cards, I think my review on this one is going to be, if you're playing this with exploit, it can be pretty good. Like the card that I was just discussing, this one has the opportunity to defeat an enemy space unit on attack, and the fact that it's a -2/-2 actually means that it can directly counter the infamous lurking TIE Phantom, because -X/-X does work on that, while normal damage or defeat effects do not. However, this isn't a good card for 8, okay? It's not even, like, for 6, I think it's pretty good. For 8, I think it's really bad. For 4, it's pretty sweet. So the question is going to be, do you have the exploit to play this cheaply? And that's really the question. Like, to me, that's the key question for a lot of these exploit cards that are larger units. Are you going to have enough exploit to play them cheaply? Because you don't want it at its base price, but if you have exploit going, it could be scary. Lethal Crackdown, 4-cost Vigilance Villainy event. Defeat a non-leader unit, deal damage to your base equal to that unit's power. I don't love this. There are definitely some situations where it can be cool. So one thing that's good about this card is that it's very flexible, and it's also very good at defeating units that are tough but have low power. The problem that I have with it is the fact that it deals damage to your base equal to that unit's power. In some situations, you would be able to just play a takedown or a fell the dragon or something like that to remove the target without taking damage. So the question is it worth taking damage to your base in exchange for the increased flexibility of targeting compared to something like takedown or fell the dragon? And I don't know. Personally, when I'm playing Iden and stuff, I'm not that excited about a card like this, but it's possible that it could see some play, especially in decks that don't have as many slots for removal and need it to be as flexible as possible. Because you do get that 4-cost defeat any non-leader unit, and that can be cool, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'd rather pay the 1 more for a vanquish and not take damage, or just play takedown or fell the dragon. I'm not sure. I'm not really excited by this card. Boris Ofe, I might have pronounced that wrong, my apologies. Unassuming Apprentice, 1-cost Vigilance Heroism Ground Unit, 1/1, Force Jedi Republic. Each friendly unit that was healed this phase gets +1 power. Stats are bad. Ability is super conditional. But there's one thing that makes this card, in my opinion, really interesting and maybe good, and that is that she is a 1-cost 1/1. And because she is a 1-cost 1/1 with the Force trait, You can play her on turn 1 and force throw the opponent immediately. You could play her on turn 1, give her a Jedi lightsaber on turn 2. Now she's a 4/4 and gives -2/2 to the attack target. So I think that if she didn't have the force trait, I would say that this card was really bad. But because she does have the force trait, I think there's a potential. I'm not saying for sure, but I think there's a potential for force synergies to be good enough with her to make this actually quite a strong card. And we'll have to see if that turns out, but I am not as pessimistic as I would be for a card that had this stat line and this ability with different traits. 41st Elite Corps, 3-cost Vigilance Heroism Ground Unit, 3/3 Republic Clone Trooper. Coordinate, this unit gets +0/+3. Not thrilling to me. So the problem with abilities that give conditional HP is that if you lose the ability, you lose the HP. So the 41st Elite Corps could be a 3/6. And you attack with it and defeat an enemy 3/3 unit, and you're still alive because you have the +3 HP. But then the opponent removes a different unit of yours. You no longer have coordinate, and now this unit dies too. I think the potential to get the conditional nature of this card and the potential to get hit by a 2-for-1 is, in my opinion, not worth the admittedly well above curve stats that you get with coordinate. So I don't love this card. I'm not saying it's unplayable, but I don't like the conditional nature of those bonus HP abilities necessarily. For the Republic, 3-cost Vigilance Heroism upgrade. If you control 3 or more Republic units, this upgrade costs 2 less to play. Attached unit gains Coordinate, Restore 2. So when it attacks, it's going to heal 2 damage from your base. I like this. I think this is pretty cool. So I think the idea with this is basically you have a Republic Coordinate or Swarm deck, and you're going to be able to set up Coordinate, play this upgrade, and it's only going to cost 1 for +2/+2, which is already above curve. A +2/+2 upgrade usually costs 2, and then you also get Coordinate Restore 2 if you can maintain that larger number of units. I don't know how often you're going to be able to do that, but if you have a deck that can do that even somewhat consistently, I think this card could be very strong. So I'm optimistic about it as it currently stands. Compassionate Senator, 1-cost Vigilance Ground Unit, 0/4 Republic Official, action, 2 resources, and exhaust to heal 2 damage from a unit or base. So I think this card is quite bad on its normal merits. The main thing that I'll say about it that might be an upside is that I do think that this could potentially be a good coordinate enabler because it's not something that your opponent wants to spend time attacking. But I don't know. I really don't want to spend 2 for that ability. Like 2 and exhaust for that, it doesn't feel great. Like, yes, it's a resource sink if you don't have better stuff to do with your turn, but I look at something like this and I think I would rather play a 1-cost unit that has like more relevant fighting stats. I don't know. It does have the Republic trait and the official trait; those are relevant traits. So maybe this will end up being a piece of the puzzle for a deck that runs those synergies. But I'd be looking for units that had, maybe they were still tough, but they had a somewhat more relevant ability. Warrior Drone, 1-cost 1/4 Vigilance Ground Unit, Separatist. So it's funny. I was just talking about how I'd rather have a unit with a more relevant ability. This unit has no ability, but I think I might actually prefer it to the Compassionate Senator, at least if we take traits out of the equation, because this is, this is a decent stat line. Yes, it's not hero. Yes, it's not set 1 R2D2 who has these stats and a actually quite good ability, but set 1 R2 is well above curve. And this I think could be useful. It can enable coordinate and exploit, and it's annoying for your opponent to remove. Very basic kind of card, not something really flashy, but I think it has a role, and at the very least, I think it could be quite relevant in limited play. And I could even see something like this seen play in constructed if we have good enough Separatist synergies. Trade Federation Shuttle, 3-cost Vigilance Space Unit, 2/3 Separatist Vehicle Transport. When played, if you control a damaged unit, create a battle droid token. 3 for a 2/3 in space is horrible. 3 for a 2/3 in space and a battle droid token is decent. So really the question is, how often are you going to have a damaged unit to enable this? And I don't know. I can think of some plays that would be really annoying with this. So let's say turn 1, you play Dr. Pershing. Turn 2, you use Dr. Pershing's ability on himself, draw a card. Now he's damaged. And now you play the Trade Federation Shuttle and you get a 2/3 in space and a 1/1. The problem is, like, even when you're getting this ability, this card isn't amazing. I kind of wish this were like a 3/3 in space or something where its stats were just like a little bit more relevant. Because as it stands, I'm not like thrilled about the play even when I fulfill the condition. And that's one of the things that makes me hesitant to play a conditional card. Usually if I'm playing a conditional card instead of one that's always good, I want it to be exceptionally strong when I'm fulfilling the condition. And to me, this doesn't feel strong enough for me to be like, oh, nice, I got it. And like really enthused about fulfilling that condition and getting value out of this card. So I'm not too optimistic about it. Don't think it's unplayable, but I don't know. Doesn't seem like something thrilling, even when you do have that damaged unit to get the free token. Vulture Interceptor Wing, 4-cost 3/3 on attack. Give an enemy unit -1/-1 for this phase. So 4 for a 3/3 is a really bad stat line, unfortunately. Even in space, you know, we're looking now at 3 for 3/4 in space. So this costs 1 more and has worse stats. The on-attack ability is actually quite good. You can use it on the target that you're attacking, or you could actually use it on a ground unit and debuff, or like another space unit and get a relevant debuff while you make your attack. So I do think the ability here is really good, but I don't think the ability is so good that it makes up for the very, very poor base stats, unfortunately. I think it's a cool idea for a card, but I just think it came in a little too weak on the baseline stats. Falchion Ion Tank. This is a 6-cost Vigilance ground unit. It is a 4/6 Republic vehicle tank, and it has Sentinel. So 6 for a 4/6 Sentinel is not a terrible stat line. But the problem is that there are existing cards that are 6 for a 4/6 Sentinel with upside. So Obi-Wan is 6 for a 4/6 Sentinel, and he has a very relevant ability, and he has the Force trait. Or the Mandalorian is 6, I think, actually for a 5/6 Sentinel. And so I think this is... maybe there's some villain deck that plays this, but I think this is almost unplayable and constructed just because there are cards that basically do the exact same thing better. But in draft, something like this is actually solid. Like a 4/6 Sentinel is an annoying stat line, especially I think in an environment where there's going to be a focus on smaller units. So I can see this unit actually being pretty successful in limited play, but in constructed, I think there are, like, unless Republic synergy is so amazing that it's worth playing something like this over a card that is almost objectively better. I think that this is really not going to shine in constructed, but in limited, I could see it being I could definitely see it being a very relevant card. Perilous Position, 3-cost upgrade. It says -3/-3 here, but that's actually an error. It's -2/-2 when played exhaust attached unit. This is really good. I think this card is going to see a lot of play. So right now, people already play Make an Opening, which is 3 to give a unit -2/-2 for 1 turn and draw a card. And what that card is usually used to do is to kill things like the Lurking TIE Phantom that can't take damage, but -X/-X works on it, or to kill, let's say, a Crafty Smuggler, or it kills Crafty Smuggler through its shield. It kills 7th Fleet Defender through its shield. Well, Perilous Position can be played for that same purpose of killing a unit through its shield, and you don't get the 2 heal. But I think what you gain in flexibility from the ability to exhaust the unit and the fact that the debuff lasts for multiple turns makes it way more relevant in scenarios where they don't have a unit that has only 2 health remaining. And as a result, I think this is going to end up replacing or being played in addition to Make an Opening, which is already a strong and played card. Now, it is vulnerable to upgrade removal, but the fact that often you'll play this for an immediate kill, and even when you don't, you might play it for the immediate exhaust and debuff. So I think even if they have upgrade removal, this card is unusually resilient to it, because you'll be playing it for a kill or you'll be playing it for an exhaust, and as a result of that, it's going to be more difficult for the opponent to handle than some other cards. I think this is going to see almost immediate substantial constructed play when it comes out. I could be wrong, but Make an Opening is main deck in some decks right now, and this card I think is going to be better than Make an Opening in a lot of cases. Unshakable Will, 4-cost Vigilance upgrade. Attached unit gains Sentinel in +2/+2. This one's a lot harder for me to evaluate. So I think that I was talking about how that Perilous position was unusually resilient to upgrade removal. This card is like the opposite. This is the type of thing where the opponent loves to see a card like this if they have upgrade removal. Because if you play this and your opponent plays Disabling Fangfighter, they defeated your card with a less expensive card and they got a unit out of it. Or they play a Confiscate and they defeat your card for something that costs 3 less and they're way ahead on resources with that play. So this is very vulnerable to upgrade removal, and there's a lot of upgrade removal going around in the current meta. Now, that being said, 4 for +2/+2 and Sentinel can potentially be a really big obstacle for an opponent. So in a scenario where the opponent doesn't have upgrade removal to counter this, I think could be really good, especially because there are a fair few units, especially in Vigilance, that have a high stat line with a lot of HP. Your opponent might want to ignore those units, but by giving them Sentinel, all of a sudden they can't. So you could, I could see this card being played, even like, something like Lom Pike, where he's a 4-cost 4/6. And then you play this on him the next turn. And now he is a 6/8. That could be really annoying. So, sorry guys, I got the hiccups a bit there. So I think this is potentially strong. I think it will be strong in limited, where upgrade removal is hard to come by. But I'm not sure that I would run it in the present constructed meta where there is a lot of upgrade removal. I do think it's also vulnerable to 2-for-1s with heavy removal cards. Like if you play this on something and then they respond with a Vanquish, you're pretty unhappy about that because they just took out 2 of your cards with 1 of theirs. But in a situation where they don't have some direct answer, this could be a lot of value on the board, in my opinion. Guarding the Way, 2-cost Vigilance Tactic. This is an event. Give a unit Sentinel for this phase. Units in this arena can't attack your non-Sentinel units or your base. And if you have the initiative, you also give that unit +2/+2 for this phase. So this is an interesting one. This is, I think the ideal scenario for this is it's like, oh, this is the first action of the turn. I'm gonna buff up my unit and give it Sentinel, and I've created a big obstacle. And the art seems to show Chariot there, and I think it would work very well with Chariot, the leader unit. So I think this is potentially a relevant card. It is a little narrow. But it can be a big obstacle in the right situation. Right now, I think this will be quite relevant in limited. I don't think it'll quite make the cut in constructed, but I could be wrong. We'll have to see. Disruptive Burst, 3-cost event. Give each enemy unit -1/-1 for this phase. While the art here is very characterful because it seems to show a lot of battle droids getting zapped, and this card is going to be amazing if the opponent has a big army of battle droids, because -1/-1 will kill all of them. The problem with this is that there are a lot of situations where giving a bunch of units -1/-1 doesn't do that much, but against a wide board, I don't know, maybe the opponent has a unit or 2 that dies from this, and then another unit or 2 that now has worse stats and like gets led into unfavorable trades. I think something like this could be quite good in the right situation, and in limited it seems like it could be really sweet, and in constructed I'm not sure. If we see a really wide meta, maybe. I'm a little worried because I do feel that we've seen a lot more cards that seem like they punish a really wide meta than I've seen cards that I think really enable a really wide meta, so it's a little odd there. But I think this is a cool card. Advanced Recon Commando, 3-cost, command heroism, 4/3 ground unit, Republic clone trooper, and it has Overwhelm. I'd be more excited about this card if we hadn't seen so many 3-cost 3/5s in set 2. As it stands, the 3-cost 4/3 stat line is not a place that feels great to me. That being said, I think it's a relevant ability to have, especially in a set with a lot of small units. This guy can attack, kill a battle droid or a clone trooper token, stay alive, and deal some excess damage to the opponent's base. And that seems pretty cool to me. Overall, I think likely going to be a strong limited card, probably not a strong constructed card. We'll have to see. Petition the Senate, 3-cost command heroism event. If you control 3 or more official units, draw 3 cards, and it costs 3. Are you going to reliably control 3 or more official units? If you have a deck that does that, 3 for 3 cards is pretty good. That being said, card advantage and card draw in this game tends to not be very good relative to other games, so I'm not like thrilled by this because there's an annoying condition around it, and then the actual thing you get out of it, card draw, is not at its highest value in this game. But maybe there's going to be some official based deck that can play this and help flood the board and so on. I can definitely see it being good in the right situation, but as it stands, it's a conditional card that does something that most decks don't really want. I think the best case for this is a deck that has a lot of cheap officials and is going for some kind of coordinate synergy or similar. And this could be a good card in that kind of context because it helps refill your hand after you've played out a bunch of cheap units. But, we'll have to see how it does. Steadfast Senator. Hey, there's a cheap official. There's a card that works with that. 1 cost command ground unit, 0/4. Action, spend 2 and exhaust to attack with a unit. It gets +2 power for this attack. I like this better than the one that heals, but I don't love it. That's what I'd say about the Steadfast Senator. I'm not thrilled by playing a 1 cost 0/4, but it could be a nice coordinate enabler. I don't like paying 2 for this, but it could be something good to do if you don't have anything else to do with your resources. The opponent's probably not going to prioritize attacking this too much. One problem, though, is that if you do have coordinate and the opponent wants to stop it, attacking into a zero power unit is pretty easy for them to do. So I don't know. I'm not thrilled. I'm not thrilled by the Steadfast Senator. This whole set, all of these 0/4 and you pay 2 to do something units are not very exciting to me, to be honest with you. But we'll have to see. Ryloth Militia, 2 cost command ground unit, 2/3 Twilight Trooper, raid 1. It gets +1 power while attacking. This is good. This is like, so look, it's not Battlefield Marine. Battlefield Marine is just a straight 2 cost 3/3. But 2 for a 2/3 raid 1 is honestly quite good and could see constructed play, especially in decks that either can't play Battlefield Marine or want more early aggressive units in addition to the Battlefield Marine. I think in limited, this card's going to be very good. It kills other 2 cost 2/3s, at least if you have the initiative to do that first attack. And I think it's not super flashy, it's not super cool, but I think it's good enough to see some play, definitely in limited and perhaps in constructed too. All right, this next one's taking a little bit to load here. Let's see what's going on here. There we go. B2 Legionnaires. Sorry about the little delay there. This is a 5 cost. This is a 5 cost 5/4. It's a command ground unit. It has Sentinel units in this arena can't attack your non-Sentinel units or your base, and it has Overwhelm. While attacking an enemy unit, deal excess damage to the opponent's base. This is going to be, I think, a solid profile in limited. In constructed, I'm not sure that I want to spend 5 for this. I don't value Overwhelm all that highly, and I would prefer a Sentinel that had more HP. So even just the 4/5 AAT Sentinel card that costs 5, I think I would like it more than this, though I could be wrong. However, I think this is going to be a very solid power level for a limited card at least, and it could also represent a threat in constructed. If you have Overwhelming Barrage in your deck, firing that off from this unit is a lot of damage. So it could be pretty strong in the right setting. Overall, I think you're likely going to be able to find better units elsewhere, but I don't think this is terrible. I'm just not a huge Overwhelm fan. But Overwhelm could be rising in value with a lot of those cheaper units like I was talking about earlier. So maybe this is going to end up being a strong constructed card. We'll have to see. Bactoid Spider Droid, 8 cost ground unit, command 5/6 Separatist Droid Walker, exploit 2 when playing this card, defeat up to 2 units you control. This card costs 2 less for each unit defeated this way, and it has Ambush. Ambush is a really good keyword. 8 for a 5/6 is not really good. 8 for a 5/6 is really bad. Like a bunch of other units, it is going to be dependent on whether or not you can use exploit. So if you use exploit with 1 card, and this is a 6 for a 5/6 ambush, I think it's decently good. It's not the best, but it's not the worst. That's quite reasonable. And if you exploit 2 and it's 4 for a 5/6 ambush, then it's like crazy good. You can kill like basically anything that the opponent is going to have at that point, unless it has a shield or it's some other exploit thing or something really buffed. But you know, like a bunch of the other exploit cards, the question is, are you going to be able to enable exploit? And if you are, great. And if you're not great. Okay. Squad support, 3 cost upgrade, attached to a non-leader unit. Attached unit gains, this unit gets +1/+1 for each trooper unit you control. This card I think is pretty bad. 2 for a 2/2 is on curve, 2 for a +2/+2 upgrade is on curve, often with a little upside. This is 3 for +0/+0. You have to have 3 troopers for it to be 3 for +3/+3. And at 3 for +3/+3, it's actually not as good as some other 3 cost upgrades. So for this card to be really worth it, you have to have 4 or more troopers in play. How likely are you going to have that? I don't think that's very likely, and it only attaches to a non-leader unit. Upgrades are often best on leaders because leaders are immune to some removal cards that would otherwise be used against an upgraded unit to try to get a 2-for-1. If you have a really wide swarm deck and you have 6 battle droids, this card's awesome. But how often are you going to have that? I don't think it will be often enough for this to be a good card. Corner the Prey, 1 cost aggression villainy event. Attack with a unit gets +1 power on this attack for each damage on the defender at the start of this attack. So this is like potentially really sweet for like an overwhelm unit in particular. And it can also allow you to, this could be like the final blow against a powerful unit. So let's say your opponent has, I don't know, let's say they have a 4/6 Sentinel, like that tank that we were showing earlier, and you've kind of chipped away at it and it's taken 2 or 3 damage. And now you can use Corner the Prey and send in like a measly battle droid, but with the buff from the damage already on the unit, you can take it out. So this could be a good card, especially for that sort of, you know, swarm, death by 1,000 cuts type style that we see some people playing. I think it remains to be seen just how strong it's going to be. And I believe, just to be clear, this doesn't work on bases. If this does work on bases, it's a completely insane card and one of the best cards in the game. But I'm just assuming that it doesn't, just for like basic sanity reasons. Because if if this gets +1 for each damage on a base, then this is like a total insanity tier aggro finisher, and you would play it out of aspect in Sabine decks all over the place because it would let you just like kill the opponent immediately early in the game. I just assume that it doesn't work on bases because it would be broken if it did. And so if it does work on bases for some reason, it's like S tier, like best card in the set. And then if it doesn't work on bases, I'm not sure how good it will be, but I think it at least has potential. All right. And so that was, that one was a little ruling dependent. Here we have Steela Gerrera, beloved tactician, 4 cost, aggression heroism ground unit. She's a 4/3. When played and when defeated, you may deal 2 damage to your base. If you do, search the top 8 cards of your deck for a tactic card, reveal it, and draw it. Put the other cards in the bottom of your deck in a random order. So 4 for a 4/3 is pretty bad. You would be looking at 3 for a 4/3. However, Steela offers substantial card advantage, and she does that at the price of damage to your base, but for an aggro deck, that could be quite reasonable. And if we look, let's look at some of the tactic cards that are in the game. So I think we do TR tactic. So, what we're really going to be looking at, so like Rebel Assault, that's a tactic. Attack Pattern Delta. So Overrun Barrage is, but it's out of aspect. Heroic Sacrifice is a tactic. That's very relevant for an aggro deck where you might be willing to damage your base to get some cards. Precision Fire could be relevant. Keep Fighting. Some of these are more removal oriented. I'm really looking for like aggro type tactics, but there are definitely a few. Outmaneuver could be relevant if you're racing lane against lane. And Daring Raid, quite relevant. If you're going for, if you're trying to do a hand destruction game plan, Pillage is a tactic here. Timely Intervention is a tactic, and Surprise Strike is a tactic. Now that's an exciting one. Surprise Strike is a super good finisher card for these aggro decks. Oops, didn't mean to zoom in on Surprise Strike. But Anyway, so there are a fair number of tactics that could be exciting for an aggro deck that's trying to get that final damage, and but also there are a lot of removal tactics. I could see her even being played in a more control-oriented deck where you're going to pull that open fire, you're going to pull that takedown, you're going to use that to stabilize the board, and you do get this draw not only when played and when defeated, as long as you're willing to deal 2 damage to your base each time. So I think Steela Gerrera is actually pretty cool here. Senatorial Corvette, 5-cost aggression heroism. Republic vehicle capital ship, it's a space unit, 5/4 with Saboteur, and when defeated, each opponent discards a card from their hand. I think this is actually very good. So cards that force the opponent to discard when defeated can be really annoying. The main one that we currently have is K2. Admittedly, K2 also gets to choose for damage if you're going for a more aggro game plan, but the hand destruction game plan really likes cards like that because it's basically almost a guaranteed 2-for-1. The opponent has to spend some kind of card to deal with your card, and then they have to discard a card from hand as well. So I think the Senatorial Corvette, 5 for a 5/4 in space, is not... So it's not like the best stat line, but it's not garbage, especially because it's space. And the fact that it has Saboteur, which is also very fitting because the ship there was used as a blockade runner by the rebels. So, you can run past a blockade with this unit, deal some damage to their base, and when they do finally deal with it, they have to discard a card from hand. I like this. I think this is a good card. Disaffected Senator, another in the 1-cost 0/4 party. 1-cost 0/4 aggression ground unit. He is a Separatist official instead of a Republic official. As an action, spend 2 and exhaust to deal 2 damage to a base. I like this ability better than some of them, but I still don't like the fundamental concept of these units, so I'm not thrilled by this guy. Ultimately, none of these effects really seem that worth spending 2 for. On the plus side, this guy can potentially break through a blockade if the opponent has some big sentinels or something. But on the minus side, if your opponent has control of the arena, they can probably just attack into this guy and kill him. So really not very exciting in my opinion. I would rather play a unit that was cheap and just had normal stats for fighting probably. Maybe the official trait's going to be really good sometime, but... I don't know. I also have been liking the Republic synergies that I've seen more than the Separatist synergies. So the fact that he is a Separatist instead of a Republic card is it's interesting. All right, we got another one that is lagging a bit here. I'm gonna quickly try and I'm not entirely sure what's going on. Swooty B is unfortunately kind of slow sometimes. Okay, so I skipped ahead. This was later in the set, and it was not the card I was intending to do, but I'll do that one while the other one loads, I guess. This is the Holdout Blaster. It is a 1-cost. So this is a 1-cost upgrade. It is +1 power attached to a non-vehicle unit, and when played, you may have attached unit deal 1 damage to a ground unit. In the right situation, this is really good. So let's say you play something, they play Greedo, you give your guy, you play R2, they play Greedo, you play this on R2 and kill Greedo, and now R2's buffed for further turns. Pretty sweet. You play this and kill a battle droid token, and now your opponent can't do the exploit plan they were going for, and you got buffed. Pretty sweet. The situation where I am gonna not like this is when there isn't a relevant target for the 1 damage, but there are enough relevant targets for 1 damage that I think this is at least limited playable and might well be good and constructed also in some metas. Like if we see a lot of 1 HP units, things like the Greedo, Death Star Stormtrooper, or if we see a lot of shielded units where that 1 damage ping is enough to knock off the shield, I think this could be quite strong. Headhunter Squadron, another aspectless card. It is a 2-cost 1/4 in space, Republic vehicle fighter. I think this is actually very playable. It is a Republic unit. It can enable coordinate with its stats. It will be kind of annoying for your opponent to deal with, especially in space, because units at its cost will not directly trade with it, at least not in one attack, and maybe you have some other effect to buff it later. Overall, I think this could play a quite relevant role. Aggrieved Parliamentarian. I think this is a funny name in art, but it's very narrow. So this is a 2-cost ground unit, 2/2 Separatist official, and when played, choose an opponent, and they shuffle their discard pile and put it on the bottom of their deck. So this is a counter to recursion tactics. And it actually, if the opponent has a deck that is going for some, let's say they have like Afra or something, or they're trying to go for some big play with Palpatine's Return. Well, you can play this and send their entire discard pile to the bottom of their deck and just negate all those discard-based plays. You can use this to put Kylo's TIE Silencer into a spot where they can't play it if they've discarded it from hand. The problem is 2 for a 2/2s below curve, and the ability is very narrow. I think this is potentially going to see play as like a sideboardy counter type card in a world where there are prevalent cards that have discard pile stuff. Right now, we don't really see that, so I don't think this card is good. But but it's like a safety valve for future situations, in my opinion. Heroes on both sides. This is a 2-cost heroism event. Choose up to 1 Republic unit and up to 1 Separatist unit and give each chosen unit +2/+2 and Saboteur for this phase. This card is really cool if you have both Republic and Separatist units on the field. It can also potentially be good if you have a Republic unit and your opponent has a Separatist unit or whatever, but their unit is exhausted and yours is ready, because then you give them this buff, but it doesn't do anything, and you're just buffing your side. So I think this could be a quite strong card in a deck that combines both Republic and Separatist units, which I think is actually going to be fairly easy to do since a fair number of Republic and Separatist units are not heroism or villainy, but just have one of the neutral aspects. If you do manage to get 2 of your own units buffed with this, it could be really good. So, yeah. Normally, I'm not that hype about like these temporary buff cards, but this one I think offers an unusually good rate if you do manage to get 2 units buffed with it. So I think it could definitely be cool. Armored Saber Tank, 6-cost 5/5 Sentinel, ground unit, heroism, Republic vehicle trait. I don't like it. 6 for a 5/5 Sentinel is not very good. I would rather have 6 for a 4/6 Sentinel, and there's 6 for 4/6 Sentinel with upside. So I think this stat line is bad. It is quite playable. I think this is going to be quite playable in limited, as I've said before. I think that this is actually a kind of scary stat line in limited. It'll be annoying for your opponent to deal with, but I would rather have the 5-cost 4/5 Sentinel AAT, and I would probably rather have the 6-cost 4/6 Sentinel, what was it, the Falchion tank from earlier. But this isn't unplayable, in limited at least. And if the Republic trait's really good, maybe we see it in constructed too. But right now, I think it'll be good in limited, not so good in constructed. Dwarf Spider Droid, 4-cost 3/4 with grit. It is a villain ground unit. It is Separatist and droid. It is not vehicle. I don't really like it. 4 for a 3/4 is a very bad stat line. The fact that it has grit doesn't really make up for it that much, especially because I think that it's going to... So at 4 cost, you're really looking for 9 points of stats. This has 7. So it's actually 2 stats below curve, and the text isn't good enough to make up for it, in my opinion. I think this is going to be pretty weak. Unfortunately, I think it has cool art, and I think these are like a cool concept. I remember these from the movie, but I don't think it's really... I don't think it's at a competitive power level. Breaking in, 2-cost tactic. It is an event. It is Cunning. Attack with a unit and it gets +2 power and gains Saboteur for this attack. When this unit attacks, ignore Sentinel and defeat the defender's shields. This is an extremely playable card in my opinion. So compare this to Surprise Strike. Surprise Strike is 2 and you attack with a unit and gets +3 and doesn't gain Saboteur. Sometimes this is better than Surprise Strike if your opponent is blocking you out with a Sentinel or something. Surprise Strike is more like raw power in like just a straight race type thing, but when Saboteur is good, this card is really good. I think this is a very playable card. I think this could easily see constructed play. It's actually, I think, going to be less good in this set's limited format than in some other limited formats because this set doesn't have shields. So you're not going to get the plays where you use this and defeat a shielded unit immediately. But we have seen a fair few big Sentinels, and this card allows you to get some damage past those. So, maybe it's still quite good. We'll have to see. Hidden Sharpshooter, 4 for a 4/3 ambush, Republic clone and trooper traits. So ambush is a really good keyword. 4 for a 4/3 ambush is kind of a weird stat line. So I don't think it's I don't think it's that good. I don't think it's at like a constructed power level because we're looking at that point at cards like Forlom. So Forlom is four for a 4/4 ambush with upside. 4 for a 4/3 ambush though is still going to be, I think, actually kind of a menace in draft, especially if we see those cheaper units, those tokens, those 0/4 characters, stuff like that this guy can take out and remain alive against. So I think that there are similar cards that do the role better in constructed. So things like Forlom, things like modded cohort. But I think this is going to be very playable in limited. And also, sometimes we've seen ambush cards end up being good for their stats being good into a particular meta or situation. So one example would be that the Syndicate lackeys, who in some ways seem like a worse Bosk, actually saw significant constructed play in situations where having that 5 power on the ambush in particular was big. So I could see a situation where this actually ends up seeing some constructed play as well. And it does have that those Republic clone and trooper traits. So in a situation where those traits are high value, this guy could be getting some nice extra value. So right now I would say limited, yep, absolutely. Constructed, I'm skeptical, but I wouldn't be so surprised if you ended up seeing at least some constructed play. Sanctioner Shuttle, 3-cost Cunning space unit, 2/3 Republic vehicle transport, coordinate. When played, this unit captures an enemy non-leader unit that costs 3 or less. 3 for a 2/3 in space is not a good stat line, so this is going to be good if you have coordinate. If you have coordinate, you get a capture. It works across arenas, which is nice, and it works on something that costs 3 or less. The potential upside is quite high, but I think it's conditional enough. They have to have a unit that you want to capture that costs 3 or less, and you have to control 3 or more units. I think it's conditional enough that this doesn't end up being awesome, but in the right situation, it can definitely have a strong impact on the game. Freelance Assassin, 3-cost Cunning ground unit. 4/2 with the underworld trait, and when played, you may pay 2, and if you do, deal 2 damage to a unit. So this is essentially either 3 for a 4/2, which is below curve because there are other cards that are 3 for a 4/3, or it's 5 for a 4/2 that also does 2 damage to a unit. I don't love it, but I think it's going to be relevant at least in limited, and I doubt it will see much constructed play, but maybe. I like the flexibility here where you can either do it for the full 5, 4/2, and 2 damage to a unit, or you can play it earlier just as the 4/2. Maybe the opponent went to space and you want to put more pressure on them on the ground and develop a unit with a big attack value. I think this could definitely end up seeing some relevant uses, especially in limited. More skeptical of it for constructed, but I think it will be solid enough for limited. Lux Bonteri, Renegade Separatist. My apologies if I mispronounced that. 3/2 Separatist. When an opponent plays a card, if that opponent paid less than the card's cost to play it, ready or exhaust a unit. So this ability is super good. But how often does it come up? But does it even need to come up that much? Because this guy is 2 for a 3/2, which is playable. I think this is very playable even in constructed, because there are already decks that want to play a 2-cost 3/2, and the ability doesn't matter that much. And we've seen that Gamorrean that's 3/2 and he gets Sentinel if you have another green card, or the Viper Probe Droid, 2 for a 3/2, look at your opponent's hand. We've seen cards like that get played in large part for the stats. This guy has those same stats, and he has an ability that is potentially really punishing if the opponent is running Exploit, or if they're running, various other cards that allow you to play things for free. Or for a discount or whatever. So I think this guy is actually really good. And I think he'll be relevant in limited, and I think he'll be relevant in constructed as well. I'm very positive on Lux Bonteri here. Hotshot V-Wing, 2 for a 2/3 Republic Vehicle Fighter Space Unit. This is, so look, Alliance X-Wing is 2 for a 2/3 for Rebel Vehicle Fighter, and it is a very playable card. I was playing it at the PQ that I went to yesterday. I think that is a totally playable stat line if the trait synergy is good enough. So the question is the Republic trait synergy going to be good enough to justify this in Constructed? I honestly think it might be. I think this is very playable in Limited, and if Republic ends up being powerful, it could end up being a player in Constructed as well. Favorable Delegate, 2 for a 1/5. It is a Cunning unit on the ground. Republic official. When played, draw a card. When defeated, discard a card from your hand. I actually really like this. This seems really cool to me. So 2 for a 1/5. It's going to be really annoying for your opponent to remove this unit. And so when you play this, you're going to draw a card. So in the immediate moment, you get card advantage. Now, when he's defeated, you're going to have to discard a card from your hand. So he is going to end up not drawing you a card permanently, but you get one at least for the moment. He's difficult to clear out. He has the Republican official traits, and because he's difficult to clear out, he can be a potential enabler for Coordinate. I like this guy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this ends up not being as good as I thought, but I'm quite optimistic on this unit. Clone Dive Trooper, 1 for a 2/1 Cunning ground unit. It feels like it should be maybe a C unit. Now, that's a category that exists in the game. Republic Clone and Trooper. Coordinate. While this unit is attacking, the defender gets -2 power. Gain this ability while you control 3 or more units. I think this is unfortunately very bad. The problem is that with only 1 HP, this ability, like, I guess what this is he's a guy that you play and then you have Coordinate, and then he attacks and kills other cheap units or tokens without dying. I would like this guy a lot more if it said the defender gets -3 power, because he would be more relevant against normal units then. But I don't know, like, even then, a 2/1 is just so easy to deal with in this game. I don't know. Maybe he'll be good though. Like if we see enough tokens, this type of ability could be quite relevant in fighting against those tokens and cheap units. So that's what I'll say about that. But I do think he'll be taken out. I don't know. Even then, what if they just attack into him with a battle droid? I don't like this guy very much. I'll be honest with you. I can see the situation where he becomes annoying against tokens, but it seems too conditional to me, especially since he requires Coordinate to get that going. Could be wrong, but I'm not thrilled by this one. Cool concept though. Impropriety among thieves, double Cunning event. Choose a ready non-leader unit controlled by each player. If you do, each player takes control of the chosen unit controlled by the player to their right. At the start of the regroup phase, each player takes control of each unit they own that was chosen for this ability. So this is a weird effect, but basically, I'm just going to talk about this in a 1v1 context. So in a 1v1 context, you swap one of your units for one of your opponent's units for the turn. I think this could be really good. So let's say that you play this and you give them that representative we were just showing, the 1/5 that makes you discard when he dies, and you take a powerful unit of theirs and you attack them with the powerful unit, and you end up killing that representative while your opponent controls it, and now they have to discard. Seems like it could be potentially an annoying trick to play on them, and it could also just be a cheaper way to get an effect similar to Change of Heart or to Choose Sides if you have some cheap bad unit that you don't care about giving them and you get their unit for the turn. So I think it can be pretty cool. I will say that Change of Heart is not seen as much play these days, so it's possible that this will also not, but it is also much cheaper. I think also this works even if you don't have a unit. So if your field is empty, I think you just take their unit, as I understand it. So I think this could be quite an annoying card. 502 Bad Gateway. That is not the card that I wanted. All right, there we go. Republic Attack Pod. Here, I'm going to just refresh some of these that got bugged also for the future here. Republic Attack Pod, 6 for a 6/7. It is a Cunning Heroism card. It is a ground unit. If you control 3 or more units, this unit costs 1 less to play. So 6 for a 6/7 is on curve stat-wise. but it doesn't give you anything other than the stats. So it's actually kind of bad because you would also have something like the ATST that is 6 for the 6/7 and you get an ability. Additionally, it's an expensive unit with no immediate board impact. Now, if you control 3 or more units, you play this for 5. So if you're playing this for 5 for a 6/7 is quite above curve stat-wise, but it still suffers from being an expensive card with no immediate board impact. So it's a little interesting to me. Is 6/7 such a crazy stat line that it's worth paying 5 for? I'm skeptical of it even then, honestly. So in limited, I think this is good. In constructed, I don't think this is up to the task, even if you are going to be able to reliably have 3 or more units to make it cost less. So yeah, I mean, it's an expensive unit with no immediate board impact, which tends to be a big problem in constructed formats, at least. And I don't think being a 6/7 is good enough for 5. So like Poe is a 6/6 for 5, and people often don't play him in decks that don't have ECL or some way to get him out early. And he has like a super strong ability. And yes, this has 1 more HP, but it has no text. Yeah, so I think this is not where it's at for constructed. It will be playable in limited. And if you can play it more cheaply, it's obviously better, but I don't think it's like good enough to make it really good necessarily. Cad Bane Hostage Taker, 7-cost Cunning Villainy Ground Unit, 7/7 Underworld Bounty Hunter. When played, this unit captures up to 3 enemy non-leader units with a total of 8 or less remaining HP. On attack, the defending player may rescue a card they own guarded by this unit, and if they do, draw 2 cards. Yeah. Okay, so look, 7 for a 7/7 that captures up to 3 enemy units. That can be really high impact. The awkward part is if the opponent has a way to clear him, they get their units back immediately. And on attack, they also start getting their units back, which is pretty awkward, but at least but maybe, you know, the drawing 2 cards, they don't want you to do that, so they won't do it. I don't know. It has an opponent's choice aspect to it that I don't like, but it's also really disruptive when you first play him. Like, if you play him for 7 and actually capture 3 enemy units, that could be huge in a race or similar. I think this guy's going to end up being good, or at least like somewhat good. And he is a legendary, so he's not going to be relevant in limited where he'd be really strong. But in constructed, I could see this. But I don't know. Like, if it is a race, do races get to 7 resources? He's weird. I don't know. We'll have to see. I see at least some potential in Cad Bane, but I don't know for sure. The capturing up to 3 enemy units could be really big, but the on-attack ability, giving them an easy way to get their units back, gives me pause, but maybe the cards are worth. I got a lot of uncertainty about this one, to be honest with you. We'll have to see how he does in actual testing. Infiltrating Demolisher, 4-cost 4/5 Cunning Villainy, exploit 1 while playing this card, defeat up to 1 unit you control. This card costs 2 less for each unit defeated this way, and it has Saboteur. This is super good. This is like, it's kind of weird to see a card like this and see some of the other exploit cards. This card is good if you don't exploit it. 4 for a 4/5 Saboteur is completely playable. That's totally playable for its base cost. If you play this for 2, it's nuts. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little confused by this one, honestly. There are a few exploit cards that seem good even if you don't exploit them, and like super good if you do. Yeah, I'm optimistic on the Infiltrating Demolisher. You know, I think this is. I don't know what it will end up looking like for constructed, but at least in limited, I think this will be very, very strong. And in constructed, I could easily see this being very relevant as well. The stats that you get for the cost are like on curve, even if you don't exploit, and really good if you do. So overall, looking good to me. There's another bugged page. Let's Planetary Invasion. We have just a few more here. Planetary Invasion is a 12-cost aggression event. Exploit 3. Ready up to 3 units. Each of those units gets +1 power and gains Overwhelm for this phase. And it is a legendary. I don't like this. I get the concept of it, The problem is, I feel like at 12 it's too expensive, and it has exploit to mitigate that. So let's say I sacrifice 3 units and I play this for 6. Well, then it readies up to 3 units, so I really want to have 3 other units that are exhausted, so this is only going to work if I have a super wide board. Yes, it's really good in the right situation, but I think it's too clunky. I don't know. I don't see this being that big unless really wide decks become prevalent. And honestly, if really wide decks become prevalent, I think that the multitude of wide board answers that they've printed in this set will suppress those types of decks before something like this ends up being a big payoff. Could be wrong, but I don't think this is going to be very strong. This one was also bugged at first load there, but we have caught in the crossfire, 6-cost aggression event. Choose 2 enemy units in the same arena, and each of those units deals damage equal to its power to the other. This is a weird one. This one has really high potential in the right situation. So ideally what's happening here is, let's say the opponent has 2 5/5s and you play this and you make their 2 5/5s kill each other. That seems very strong to me. Yeah, I mean it seems very strong to me. So just make them kill each other, but a lot of the time that isn't going to be possible. Let's say instead they have a 4/5 and a 5/5. Now you're killing one of their units and their other one is taking a bunch of damage, but it won't be immediately removed. Is that good enough? Maybe. I'm not sure. It'll need some testing. The ideal for this is 6 to kill 2 enemy units, which I think is like really good in the right scenario. But how often do you get the scenario where you actually get 2 kills? I'm not sure, especially because it has to be the same arena. I think we'll have to see some testing to see how often this ends up having the huge result that you're hoping for. I'm hopeful for it, but I can't guarantee that it'll be good. Strategic analysis, 5-cost event, draw 3 cards. I don't like it. I know that's a very direct review. This game is mostly not about card advantage. So a card that is 5 to draw 3 cards, it doesn't feel that good to me. It'll be really good in some situations, I guess. But like, I don't know. It's like, I don't really want to spend my whole turn on this. I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe my opponent's playing hand destruction. I'm almost out of cards, and this is gonna get me a crucial respite. It could be, but overall, I think card draw hasn't been anywhere near as good in this game as other games. If we see a shift towards a much cheaper curve and more swarm type stuff, maybe this does end up being good. But at least by default, I'm pretty skeptical. Old access codes, 1-cost upgrade, +1 power, +0 HP. When played, and if an opponent controls more units than you, draw a card. So this is a little below curve. Normally these types of upgrades would be 1 for +1/+1 and a little up ability instead of 1 for +1/+0. But the when played effect here is probably better than some of the other ones. So the ability to draw a card, as I was just saying, it's not that great in this game, but it's still something quite relevant. So I think the ideal for this is that, like, this card, you play it on your unit and it gets your unit to a breakpoint and it draws you a card. That's pretty good. How often do you get that? I don't know. Is it enough to see a lot of play? I don't know, but it could be. Sorry about that, guys. Had to cough there. I think, in a deck where people might be doing swarm strategies, maybe this is a good card when you're on the losing side of that and the opponent has more units than you. You get to buff up one of your units and draw a card to give you some more options. Limited seems playable, and limited at least. I don't know about constructed. All right. Another one that's not immediately working, and this is the second to last card here, Reckless Torrent, 3-cost +3/+, 3-cost 3/1 space unit. Aggression only, Republic Vehicle Fighter, coordinate. When played, you may deal 2 damage to a friendly unit and 2 damage to an enemy unit in the same arena. This is a weird one. So 3 for a 3/1 isn't the best stat line. It's threatening, but it can also be removed easily. The coordinate ability here is really interesting because if you don't have a unit in an arena, you can just deal damage to them. So like you could play this and just deal 2 damage to an enemy unit in the ground arena if you don't have a ground arena, but how likely are you to have 2 other spaceships plus this and nothing on the ground? I don't know. This is an odd one. Yeah, I don't know what I think about this. I don't like the base stats here. I wish this were like a 3/3, so then it would be like a conditional better Death Trooper. At 3-1, I'm skeptical of it with the ability being conditional. We'll see though. Maybe it'll end up being good. The ability is very flexible. It could also be used to like enable a grit unit or something, kill a friendly unit to enable a strong when defeated effect. We'll have to see with this one. I think it has a lot of potential, but the conditional nature and bad base stats make me a little hesitant. And now the last of these cards that have been previewed right here in this batch is the Bold Recon Commando. It is a 3-cost 3/4 with Saboteur. This is quite playable. I don't think it's amazing, but 3-cost 3/4 Saboteur, this is quite playable, at least in Limited. In Constructed, you probably don't want this because there's 3-cost 3/5s now, and Saboteur is a marginal ability, but I think this is very playable in Limited. It's a basic card, but it's still something cool. I also want to show, I don't know if I've covered these two before, but Unit Ventress. So Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku's Assassin, 4-cost 2/4, exploit 2. When playing this card, defeat up to 2 units you control. This card costs 2 less for each unit defeated this way. On attack, if you've attacked with another Separatist unit this phase, this unit gets +3 power for this phase. So I don't like Ventress that much. 4 for a 2/4 is a really bad stat line. Honestly, 3 for a 2/4 isn't a very good stat line. You could potentially use exploit to make her actually cost 0 or to cost 2. Which could be good, and her on-attack ability can be potentially strong. She's also a potential cheap force unit, but I don't really like the base stats here. I'm not that positive. I don't know. Maybe the force synergy is good enough. We'll have to see with Ventress. And then the one other card that we saw way earlier and that I'm not sure that I covered in this series is Darth Maul Unit. Darth Maul Revenge at Last, 5-cost aggression, villainy ground unit, 5/6 force and Sith traits, and this unit can attack 2 units instead of 1. He deals his combat damage to both defenders, and they both deal their combat damage to him, and all that damage is dealt simultaneously. So this is such a cool card. So I think this is going to be best if you're playing it from ambush, which is the case for a lot of these things. But if you ambush 2 units at once with this guy, especially if you can give him overwhelm, really scary, really scary. I really like the idea of this card. I don't know how often it's going to be good, but it's so flavorful. It seems really good in the right situation, and it seems like it also has some great synergy with Maul the Leader. So Maul the Leader here, when you have Maul the Leader, you can exhaust to attack and give him overwhelm, which can potentially take out 2 units and deal a bunch of damage to the base. And when you have him deployed, all your friendly units gain overwhelm, and that's when you can drop Darth Maul off of ECL and ambush multiple units and get overwhelm on multiple units. So I think there's a natural synergy between the two versions of Maul. I think that Darth Maul is a very flavorful and potentially effective card, and I'm excited to see how he does. So Darth Maul Revenge at Last, very cool, very flavorful. This was printed as part of the convention exclusive, so it wasn't really like a normal spoiler season type card, but I did want to make sure that I touched on him and Ventress at the end here. All right, that's going to do it. This is the last of these big spoiler review compilations. I am still going to be putting out some YouTube shorts with individual cards, but I wanted to do one more of these videos. I believe I have now covered all the cards for Twilight of the Republic, and I'm excited for this set to come out soon and to see how it goes. Thanks to y'all for watching, and stay tuned for more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.